your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. So far this year, Alberta has seen 616 wildfires, which is more than any previous year on record. As of Friday morning, 72 were still burning, with 26 fires being out of control. But there was some good news. The evacuation order for Chipewyan Lake was lifted and residents began returning to their homes on Thursday afternoon. Re-entry also continued for the town of Rainbow Lake. Fire officials say, however, that an evacuation order remains in effect for the hamlet of Fort Chipewyan, the Fort Chipewyan Métis Nation, and Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. Special air quality statements are also in effect due to the wildfire smoke. Around 3,600 Albertans remain evacuated, and there are just over 2,800 personnel working on the wildfires. The province says $21.4 million of e-transfers have been sent to help evacuees, along with $9.2 million in debit cards being distributed. Coming up later in the show, we'll introduce you to a gentleman who just returned from volunteering to help hundreds of wildfire evacuees in northern Alberta. Stephen Roach spent 3 weeks living in a kitchen truck where he served 300 displaced wildfire victims 3 meals a day. Stay tuned for his touching story. Meanwhile, with both Western and Eastern Canada on fire, staff from the Insurance Bureau of Canada provided some wildfire safety and prevention tips for homeowners who might live near areas that are susceptible to wildfires.
The best thing we can all do is really make sure that we're paying attention to the fire danger rating and checking, our local government or provincial government websites to understand any kind of alerts or evacuation orders we may be facing. Over the longer term, really important to have a family plan of what to do if you are evacuated due to a wildfire, making sure you have a plan in place for you and your family to be out of your home for at least 3 days, if not longer. When we think about our property, lots of things we can do to make sure that's well maintained. Make sure we're not including any dry yard trimmings up near our homes, where they could become quite combustible. Same thing for our gutters, and also just making sure that any trees or shrubs that we have around our properties are well maintained, well groomed, and aren't giving any kind of opportunity for sparks or other ignition materials to get in there and then create a real challenge for our home itself.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is downplaying any link between wildfires and climate change. Smith says the government is bringing in arson investigators from outside the province to trace the cause of unprecedented wildfires in Alberta. She also said that Alberta needs to do a better job as government to build fire guards around its communities. Elections Alberta announced the official results of the May 29th election. On June 8th, they confirmed that Danielle Smith's UCP won a majority government with 49 seats and the NDP won 38. 44 seats are required to form a majority government. Close to 1.8 million Albertans cast their ballots with a turnout of 59.5%. There were almost 759,000 electors who chose to take part in the advance poll, which was a record. A couple of recent recounts confirmed that 2 UCP candidates lost their seats to the NDP. Tyler Shandro lost to Diana Batten in Calgary, Acadia by 25 votes. During the initial count, it was determined that he lost by only 7 seats. And the UCP's Whitney Isaac lost to Nagwan Al-Gunaid in Calgary Glenmore. The original count showed her losing by 30 votes, but after the recount, it was determined she lost by 42 votes. Those 2 particular ridings got an automatic recount because their outcome was determined by less than 100 votes. Elections Alberta says any other candidate who wishes to request a judicial recount has until June 16th to make an application to the Court of King's Bench. And Premier Smith swore in her new cabinet Friday. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf was named the Minister of Affordability and Utilities, along with Vice Chair of the Treasury Board. Adriana LaGrange was named the new Health Minister. Demetrios Nicolaides is now the Minister of Education. Rajan Sawhney is the new Minister of Advanced Education. Mike Ellis is the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, along with the new Deputy Premier. Rick Wilson is the Minister of Indigenous Relations. Brian Jean is the new Minister of Energy and Minerals. Todd Lowen picked up the Forestry and Parks portfolio again, and R.J. Sigurdson is the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation. Jason Nixon is Seniors, Community and Social Services Minister. Environment and Protected Areas Minister is Rebecca Schultz, and Justice Minister is Mickey Amory. A full list of appointments can be found on the province's website. When we return from the break, a look to the future of Alberta's politics. We will be right back. Welcome back. Earlier this week, Hal Roberts sat down with our legislative reporter and Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, to discuss the future fine lines of diplomacy within Canada and the wants and desires of Albertans. Will Danielle Smith be the one to build bridges of support for Alberta's values? We'll have a look.
Tyler, the UCP were shut out of Edmonton, although they did pick up some seats around the area, around the provincial capital. Premier Smith has proposed a council of defeated candidates to advise her on the issues in Edmonton. So how do you think this is going to go over with Edmonton City Council and the NDP?
Well, a little bit like a lead balloon. The city council, well, the mayor, Amarjeet Sohi, came out and said, look, we've got representatives on city council. By all means, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk. And the NDP said in sort of this tongue-in-cheek brief press release saying that we've got a council of the elected that you're certainly welcome to consult on Edmonton issues. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this government, it's been a bit of a joke over the past 4 years that this government, it loves its consultations, it loves its studies, it loves its panels. I mean, I could name probably almost a half dozen of them off the top of my head. So it's not out of character, I don't think. And, a couple of the political types I've been talking to who aren't even necessarily affiliated with the UCP say, if I was in their position, I would do the same thing. Why not? But certainly the people who did win election are saying, well, gosh, why not ask us? But of course, they're not going to get some of the information they want if there's those sorts of consultations happening. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. This was sort of a proposal more than a here's the plan of what exactly we're going to do. So details on that may be yet to come.
Tyler, now that the dust has settled somewhat on the Alberta election, what will the relationship look like moving forward between Danielle Smith's UCP and the Trudeau government?
That is a great question, and I think a little bit of an open question. On her election night speech, Danielle Smith took quite a strong tone towards Ottawa, saying, I hope cabinet minister, or I hope Trudeau's caucus and cabinet are watching right now, basically saying that they're going to fight the Trudeau government every step of the way on various proposals, the net zero of the electricity grid being one of them, an emissions cap on the oil and gas sector being another. But a couple days later, the various Liberals on Parliament Hill who are in cabinet took a little bit more of a conciliatory tone, I think it would be fair to say. You Dominic LeBlanc, who's the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, saying he anticipates a good working relationship. He's going into it with an open mind, those sorts of things. So, I mean, of course, no politician in Ottawa is going to come out and say, no, we're gonna give as good as we get kind of thing. We're going to fight back too. That's just, not really the way the federal government is about to do things in public. But part of it's going back in history a bit, but part of the reason why the UCP dumped Jason Kenney was because they thought he was too soft on Ottawa. Now, that was not a big issue during the election campaign, I wouldn't say, the whole Ottawa-Alberta relationship. But it is something that the party's base, party members care very, very deeply about. So it is going to be interesting to see how Danielle Smith, who seems to have moved a little bit to the middle, sort of navigates that challenge a little bit between doing what her party members and her caucus might want versus what sort of the rest of the province wants. Plus, are the Trudeau folks going to play ball? Are they going to play nice? Are they going to play mean? I mean, it's a little up in the air, but certainly the tone set right off the bat is a pretty aggressive one, I would say.
Danielle Smith made a lot of promises during her campaign. In fact, there didn't appear to be much difference between what she was promising and Rachel Notley and the NDP promised voters. Will Danielle Smith maybe stay the moderate course? What are your thoughts?
Well, possibly she angers some of her supporters within the party. But if she moves a little bit further to the right, is she going to anger some of the more moderate Albertans that maybe voted for her? So I expect that her path to victory in the future is a more moderate one, given especially how important Calgary and Edmonton are, and obviously those cities are becoming more progressive compared to the rest of the province. But you never know. I think that's probably the logical path for her to follow. But the pressure from the party, the pressure from caucus, as we saw with Jason Kenney, it can make it quite hard to sort of try and chart a moderate course.
So maybe more of a centrist course, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that probably, she'll be more right wing on things like the relationship with Ottawa. But do I think that she's going to continue to sort of relitigate some of the COVID-19 stuff? Is she going to tackle some of the promises about adding vaccination status to the Human Rights Code? I think those things are a little bit less likely.
For more with Tyler Dawson and Hal Roberts, head over to Bridge City News' YouTube channel. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back with a few more post-election questions and comments like, what's the deal with Shandro and Issac? Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This past election period was a lot to take in. And earlier this week, BCN's Naveen Day chatted with Project Confederation's Executive Director, Josh Andrus, about the move to the center line by both parties. Have a look.
We've heard a lot about grassroots efforts in this past election to get conservative politicians elected in this most recent Alberta election. Yet the NDP gained seats in both Edmonton and Calgary. Do you have any ideas as to why there was such an orange wave or maybe orange crush in Alberta's major cities?
Well, it's one of those things where the UCP came into power in 2019 and they rode a blue wave of frustration. And it's interesting the tack that the Alberta NDP took under leader Rachel Notley in this election, where they put her in a blue blazer and blue jeans and paraded around the province as if she was a conservative. So it's one of those things where they tried to tone down their messaging. They tried to pull socialism right out of their party. They took a lot of really big swings on economics, and their environmental policy, which has been criticized as leading to issues regarding the investment climate in Alberta's energy sector, was effectively ignored by the party and a lot of people in the mainstream media as well. So it was very interesting to see that and the impact that it had in Calgary. That being said, there were certain elements of the United Conservative Party that I think did raise some concern. There were individuals that seemed to seek attention and try to get their name out there, and they were effectively liabilities on the party, I thought. And it did scare some voters in some of the more moderate regions of Calgary, like Acadia and Glenmore, where Whitney Issac and Tyler Shandro lost their seats. So it's one of those things where it's the combined effect, where it wasn't necessarily the cleanest campaign, and the NDP really, they went low. They focused on controversy. They didn't want to talk about themselves, so they tried to change channel. I think that all of those things combined did have an impact, but the fact of the matter is the UCP is in government. They've won 49 seats, 48 if you discount Jennifer Johnson and Lacombe Panoka, and they still have a strong mandate in the next 4 years to really drive about the change and stand up to Ottawa in a meaningful way as the federal government brings in policies like the Impact Assessment Act that we mentioned earlier, as well as the impending Sustainable Jobs Plan, the just transition in a new suit, we'll call it. So we've got a lot of things going on, but I think both sides can claim victory, but at the same time, I think both sides have pause for concern in the way that they approach the election campaign and how it shook out in the results.
So you touched a little bit about Rachel Notley when she was campaigning, and even during the debates being orange in blue clothing. Do you feel that the UCP did something similar when they were campaigning? It seems like they made a lot of promises when it came to healthcare and education, which are two things that the NDP really love to talk about.
Yeah, I think that they definitely did do that. They tried to seem moderate and tried to moderate in their approach. I do think that it did help take the edge off. There was a lot of times during the campaign I felt the NDP were trying to paint the UCP as an extremist, radical, right-wing conservative party when it is a Big Tent party. There are a lot of moderate conservatives in it, and that's something that I think Danielle, in her approach as leader and as premier, has tried to have a collaborative approach with people within the party and try to really reach out to as many people within the party as she can. Not least done the same thing in the NDP, and I think that's why we saw such a close election in several key ridings that ultimately could have flipped either way.
Now, it really was a two-horse race because, I mean, none of the fringe parties or the smaller parties got any seats. But do you think that they allowed the NDP to gain seats in Calgary and Edmonton?
I thought it was very interesting this campaign that both parties spent so much time trying to moderate their rough edges and kind of come closer to the center. And I think the results of the campaign, or the results of the election, sorry, really highlight those key points.
Can you just give us your thoughts on the close races involving Tyler Shandro and Whitney Isaac, who lost their seats in Calgary?
Shandro and Isaac had stronger majorities, but they were very much in these swing ridings 4 years ago that went UCP. So we are seeing, it's tough to see too, because Tyler Shandro, I thought towards the end, was a really good cabinet minister. I loved his, he was law and order Shandro at the end, I like to call him. But it is something that I do think we are seeing shifting dynamics, and maybe maybe some of the attacks the NDP laid on the UCP really did scare some of the more moderate conservatives to stay home on election day.
To see that full interview, please visit our YouTube page. When we return, he spent 3 weeks volunteering to serve hundreds who escaped the wildfires with just the shirts on their backs. Stephen Roach shares his touching story right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The wildfires raging in central and northern Alberta have not only contributed to poor air quality, but have wreaked havoc on many communities. Thousands of people have had to evacuate their homes, leaving them displaced. But on the flip side, hundreds of volunteers have stepped up to the plate to help those in need. One of them is Stephen Roach, who spent 3 weeks using his skills as a chef to feed thousands of evacuees. He joined me earlier this week to share his inspiring story. You were first put on standby, right, to go help with the fire evacuees. How did this all start? How long ago did this begin?
Was almost 4 weeks ago. I was put on standby, and I got a call. I just got back from doing a motorcycle ride when I got a call that I was to be in High Prairie for the next morning for breakfast. So,
wow, not just to be there for breakfast, but to cook breakfast, right?
To cook breakfast for 300 people at the site and where I was in Fowler.
Okay, so you just dropped everything and you just went?
Yes, I did. We said a little prayer to get our spirit, and then I was off on my way to northern Alberta.
Right, and when you say Don, you mean Don Bladen of the Salvation Army here in Lethbridge, and the truck would be the kitchen truck, right, that you worked out of. It's a mobile kitchen, basically. So you drove this mobile kitchen all the way up there. How many hours did that take? That's not just up the road. That's way up there.
It was. It's like about 13-hour drive.
Yikes.
Or so. And I had a little stopover in Edmonton, and then I got up and I was back on the road again. And I arrived there at a little after 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I was told, this is where I'm going. Here's the address. There's your food truck behind you. And off you went. So.
And people were starving, and they were probably very excited to see you show up.
It was like, it was an experience, especially because it's something I've done before, but not on this extent. Because I've cooked all over the place, and being able to help people in distress and be able to mentor people with the Spirit of God, it was even a lot more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, so you're an executive chef by trade. So is this why you were chosen to go?
No, I don't know why I was chosen to go. I was just given the reins one day, and that was it. off I went.
Stephen, had you ever done anything like this before?
No, I've been stationed at a lot of different places. I was with the Canadian Coast Guards. I was stationed in Frobisher Bay, Baffin Island, and stuff like that. But this was different. Yeah, way different.
I can imagine. Now, you provided us with some pictures of your kitchen truck, and it looks amazing. It looks cozy, though. So were you used to working in such confined spaces? I'm assuming that when you were an executive chef, you had a bit more kitchen to work with.
Yeah, but when I was stationed with the Coast Guard, my kitchen wasn't much bigger than what the truck is on board the ship. So you had a small kitchen.
Okay, so you were the perfect man for the job.
I'm not claustrophobic, put it that way.
Yeah, and I understand it's a fully equipped kitchen, too. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. It's an amazing kitchen. And it was a good truck to work out of. And by the looks of it, if it stays the way it's going right now, I'm supposed to be deployed next week again for another 2 weeks up in High Prairie again. So
Incredible. And so you did all the meals for the firefighters and the displaced people, 3 meals a day, right?
3 meals a day, yeah.
All right. You must have heard some incredible and heartbreaking stories from these people.
Yes, I did. Especially when I met some of the leading people from the different tribes that were up north, like the Métis and stuff like that. It was nice to sit down with some of the elders and find out where they were from and how they were coping. Like they were having a hard time trying to find out information for their own people if they could go back to the reservations where they are and stuff like that. That was difficult. And I had a gentleman with me. His name is Ed Dean, and he's a pastor. So he sat down with a lot of them and talked and prayed with them and stuff like that, which was, for me, was very energetic for me, because it was some days you get down and you sit down with Ed and have a nice prayer, and then you felt like you were regenerated again and you go right back to work again.
After the break, getting rich in small cities. We'll tell you where Southern Alberta ranks. That's next. Welcome back. Getting wealthy in a small town. An online financial site has ranked Lethbridge 13 out of 20 best small cities to get rich in. The results were based on median after-tax income, cost of living, and per capita GDP. Trevor Lewington, the CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge, said that there are a few main economic indicators on why he believes our city hit number 13 on the list.
Part of what the report spoke to is the relative strength of Lethbridge's economy, that it is possible to do quite well in this community. We have historically some of the lowest unemployment in the province, so job prospects here are very consistent. There's lots of opportunity here. And as it talked about affordability, we know that average house prices, for example, here are sometimes 30 or 40% less than a Calgary or an Edmonton. I think that's significant. And overall, cost of living in Lethbridge is reported to be better than some of those other major centers. So the report, it's nice to see Lethbridge included. I think it's great that they've called out the fact that you can have a decent quality of life here for less. And so that means more money in your pocket, and therefore, in their definition, an opportunity to, quote, get rich.
The top two on the list were Oakville and Burlington, Ontario, and rounding out the third spot was Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And it appears as though the housing market in Lethbridge is also heating up. Courtney Atkinson is the CEO of Atkinson Team at eXp Realty in our city. He says a number of Canadians are flocking to Alberta in search of affordable housing.
We're seeing a lot of people move here from Ontario and BC. So you can go to uhaul.com actually and check this stat. And over the last 4 years, Alberta has been the #1 destination for one-way U-Haul drop-offs in the entire country. And so if you look specifically at Calgary, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat, you're seeing a lot of folks relocate here. Why? Because it's still very affordable by Canadian standards. I mean, you can get a great house in Lethbridge or Medicine Hat for under $350,000. In Calgary, the average price is only about $550,000. So compared to Toronto, where an average house price is over $1 million, you're literally pocketing $500,000 just by moving, and you can still keep your job, work virtually, and have a shorter commute to the grocery store or any of the amenities that you want to enjoy. So there's a lot of folks wanting to experience Alberta for many reasons.
According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, the average price for a home in Lethbridge dropped 1.6% from just over $335,000 in April of 2022 to just over $329,600 in April of this year. Large cargo planes and helicopters taking off from the Lethbridge Airport is an unusual sight for the southern Alberta city. The Royal Canadian Air Force 435 Transport and Rescue Squadron invited members of the media to witness different training exercises that staff within the military are currently undertaking to help save lives. BCN's Micah Quinn was at the event and has more.
This year's annual training exercise is taking place right here in Lethbridge, and staff from 435 Squadron explained to us what a few of these training scenarios will look like for each team.
Today, one of the aircraft is going to be going out to Cranbrook. There's one of those, a Casera aircraft that the CEO was talking about, and it's simulating that it's currently having some electrical issues. It's trying to make its way back to Cranbrook. So one of our aircraft is going to go fly out there, escort them to Cranbrook because of their electrical issues. They may have trouble navigating. In the scenario itself, we're going to simulate that won't be able to make it to Cranbrook, so there's a ground team set up, and our search and rescue technicians are going to jump to the ground by parachute, provide medical aid on the ground, and then they'll be evacuated to a hospital.
It's pretty important because the mission may come any day, any night, or weekend. We have crews on alert constantly.
Military training exercises will run in Lethbridge until June 12th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
An event earlier this week at Lethbridge College highlighted the Mennonite community in the region. Amanda Sawatsky, one of the keynote speakers at the event, explained who the Mennonites are and described their belief system.
The belief system is very conservative and traditional. It is a faith-based group, although some sociologists and historians will debate that. Maybe an ethno group or an ethno-religious cultural group. We can't decide yet. We speak Low German, and like I said, it's a faith-based, very traditional, conservative values, and conservative dress. Now, the caveat to that is you can't make assumptions, and so from me, you would infer that I'm from the Low German based population because I don't dress or look like somebody. So we need to be careful that we don't make assumptions.
The Lethbridge Historical Society says back in 1940, 2 Mennonite churches in Vauxhall, Alberta, were burned down due to anti-German sentiment during the Second World War. After the break, an Alberta organization helping youth build a better life and future. Stay with us.